are one of the biggest physicists of NASA, right?
No, I am one of the engineers and physicists that work on the mission. I do not consider myself great in anything, but I did everything I could to help this mission succeed, and it did.
With curiosity too, right?
And curiosity as well. On Curiosity, I worked on the radar that landed the vehicle on Mars.
So you did something very important, right?
Thank you.
Do you think
Yes.
the Mars is a kind of our future?
Mars is a planet that is still similar to Earth. It was much more similar in the distant past. In the distant past, Mars and Earth were almost brothers and sisters. But the planet Mars differentiated and became very arid and very dry. So, even so, Mars still has an atmosphere, and it has a size that is not too small and not too big, so gravity is similar to Earth, much smaller but is still similar. So there is a future for humanity to go to Mars and perhaps colonize the planet.
So if you like to colonize it, you have some problems, like how you get there and something. And I hear Mars does not have a magnetosphere, right?
That is correct. It seems that Mars had a magnetosphere a long time ago, but for some reason the magnetic field collapsed, and possibly the planet cooled down too much, and the dynamo stopped working. So yes, there is no magnetic field, which, on Earth the magnetic field protects us from radiation. And on Mars we don't have that, so that makes life there harder.
But with the radiation, could possibly life exist or live on Mars?
We don't know. Well, it's very likely that there is no life there at present, on the surface at least. But perhaps life formed there in the distant past. And maybe we might be able to find fossils of bacterial colonies or some other ancient life forms that might have existed.
Did the Mars had enough time to form any life forms?
Again, Mars differentiated from Earth very early on. So about 3.5 billion years ago, it was already more or less what it is today. So there was very little time from the time the planets were formed, 4.5 billion years ago, to the time when it differentiated. So maybe about 1 billion years. But on Earth, life formed very early on. About 400 million years after the planet formed, we already had life on Earth. Perhaps the same thing happened on Mars. We don't know. And so these missions, one of the objectives is to find out whether life formed there or not.
When you're speaking about life forms, then how do you define life? I mean, life, just bacteria, or could it be like ETs that came to our system before creating, or before the star created?
It would be very likely, if we find life or signs of life on Mars, that there would be primitive type of life, bacterial colonies and things like that. So unicellular organisms or organisms that are very small. How do we define life? I don't know how to define life. That is a very hard question. I don't think anyone really can define life in a way that includes all life and excludes everything that is not life. But when we see life, we know it is life.
It's just like a feeling, right?
Yeah.
So then I had some other points, because when we speak about moon bases and Mars bases, that seems very sci-fi, like out of films or series. Do you think that we are very, very close to this, or more distant to the films or bases?
The problems are still gigantic, extremely hard to solve. As I talked about in my presentation, the problems are immense and it will need a lot of work, a lot of time, a lot of talent and perseverance and continuing insisting. But they are problems that, you know, humanity can solve. With our talent, our ingenuity, we will be able to solve them if we keep insisting.
What of these things could we solve by our technique point right now? Like radiation or
As
water?
I showed in my presentation, we don't have solutions to many of these problems. For example, how to produce food for a trip to Mars, how to produce oxygen for people, for the astronauts to breathe during a trip to Mars and on the surface. How do we survive the radiation? How do we survive the trip itself? You know, all the medical problems that could happen during a trip to Mars. We have no solution for any of these problems at present.